When you hear the word doping, you probably picture a cyclist powering up a mountain, right? Not someone sitting at a chessboard. But believe it or not, the world of competitive chess has the exact same kind of strict anti-doping rules. And that brings up a really fascinating question. Can you actually dope your way to a higher FIDE rating in a game of pure mind?
I know, it sounds a little bit like a punchline to a joke, doesn't it? But the World Chess Federation, FIDE, takes this incredibly seriously. So the short answer is yes, you can technically dope in chess. But the much more interesting question, the one we're going to dig into is, does it even work?
All right, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll unpack the whole idea of doping in a mind sport. Then, we'll peek inside FIDE's official rulebook. After that, we dive into a game-changing scientific study, see what its findings mean for a player's actual rating. And finally, we'll bust the myth of a chemical shortcut to becoming a grandmaster.
Okay, so first things first, let's get into this central conflict. How can a physical performance enhancer possibly matter in a game that's all happening between your ears?
Yeah, nobody's thinking that chess players are using steroids to, move the pawns with extra force. The concern here has nothing to do with muscle, it's all about the mind. FIDE is worried about cognitive enhancers, what people call smart drugs that could potentially boost your focus, your memory, and your mental stamina over a grueling 7-hour match.
So, if it's not about building muscle, why does the official FIDE rulebook even have a section on drug testing? Well, the answer has a lot more to do with politics and money than you might think.
And here it is, the key to the whole thing. FIDE adopting the World Anti-Doping Agency Code was really a brilliant strategic move. See, by getting in line with international sporting standards, chess put itself in the running for Olympic inclusion. And getting that Olympic nod, that unlocks a ton of government funding and, just as importantly, it legitimizes chess as a real top-tier international sport. Now take a look at what's actually on this list. This is what's so wild. We are not talking about some obscure lab-created chemicals here. We're talking about things like modafinil, which is prescribed for narcolepsy, and methylphenidate, which millions know by its brand name Ritalin. These are powerful psychostimulants, and you can see even everyday things like caffeine are on the monitoring list just to see if players are misusing them.
For years and years, this whole debate was just talk. It was all theoretical. Could these drugs really make you a better chess player? And then, we got the scientific smoking gun.
The year was 2017. This is when a team of scientists finally decided to stop guessing and put this whole thing to the test. They published the very first real, hard data on the subject, and it changed everything. And listen, this was not some casual online poll. This was a super rigorous, double-blind, randomized trial. That's the gold standard. They had 40 players play over 3,000 games, and neither the players nor the scientists knew who was getting the real drug and who was getting a placebo. This is as legit as scientific studies get.
And the results? Whoa, they were not subtle. Look at this. Compared to the players who got the placebo, the ones on modafinil saw their performance jump by a staggering 15%. Methylphenidate, or Ritalin, boosted it by 13%. And hey, even good old caffeine gave them a 9% lift. The answer was suddenly crystal clear. Yes, these drugs absolutely work.
But, and this is a huge but, there was a really interesting trade-off. The study found that the players on these stimulants actually played slower. It seems like their thought process got deeper, more reflective, which led to better moves. But the catch? They burned through their clock time way faster, which in a speed game meant they were actually more likely to lose by running out of time.
Okay, so a 15% performance boost sounds huge. But what does that actually mean for a competitive chess player? To figure that out, we need to translate it into the one language that every chess player on Earth understands, the ELO rating.
So for anyone who might not know, the ELO system is basically how every chess player is ranked. It's a number that just shows how good you are compared to everyone else. The bigger the difference in ELO points between two players, the higher the chances the top-rated player is going to win. Simple as that.
All right, so here's the magic number. The researchers crunched all the data, and they calculated that the performance boost they saw in the lab translates to a real-world advantage of about 100 ELO points. Now, to be clear, in the chess world, that is a massive, undeniable edge.
And if you want to put that 100-point jump into perspective, one of the lead scientists on the study, Professor Klaus Lieb, explained it perfectly. It would be like taking a player who was ranked 5,000th in the entire world and instantly bumping them up to the 3,500 spot. That is a gigantic leap up the ladder.
So, case closed, right? Just pop a pill, you gain 100 ELO points, you start climbing the ranks. Well, not so fast. This brings us to the final and maybe the most important part of this story, what I like to call the grandmaster shortcut myth.
You see, decades of science have shown us that being a chess master isn't just about raw brain power. It's about pattern recognition. A grandmaster's brain has stored away tens of thousands of these things called chunks. They're like familiar arrangements of pieces that they can recognize and react to in a split second. I think this is the best way to think about it. Imagine your brain as a computer. Doping, taking these smart drugs, is like optimizing your operating system. It can make your brain run faster, smoother, with fewer glitches by improving focus. But, and this is key, it absolutely cannot install the software. It can't just download the massive database of knowledge and patterns that takes a player years, even decades of study to build.
And that leads us to the final verdict. Can doping increase your FIDE rating? Yes, 100%. It gives you a real, measurable, significant advantage. But is it a shortcut to becoming a grandmaster? Absolutely not. It enhances the performance you already have. It can't just create the deep expertise you don't.
So, let's just quickly recap what we've learned. First, doping in chess is a real thing, and we have the science to prove it works. Second, FIDE's rules are largely there to get chess into the Olympics. Third, that big 2017 study showed that stimulants can give you a boost of about 100 ELO points. And finally, and most importantly, while that's a real advantage, it's just an enhancement. It's not a replacement for years and years of hard-earned expertise.
And that kind of leaves us with a much bigger question, doesn't it? As these kinds of cognitive enhancers get more and more common, the line between using a drug for therapy and using it for enhancement gets blurrier. So, if a pill can make you a better chess player today, what does that mean for the future of things like esports or academic exams, or really any competition where your mind is the main event? That's a question we're all going to have to figure out.